Admiral, radar shows that we have liberals approaching at 3 o'clock, and libertarians at 9 o'clock, and conservatives at 6 o'clock. They're coming from every angle, every viewpoint.
Good afternoon, Green Bay. Right? Can I say that? Oh, wait, it's a podcast. You could be listening to it in the nighttime or in the morning. Anyway, this is Elliot, and we are now rebranding. I hate that word, but we're changing up the names and clarifying some of the things we're doing. So this show that we are doing, and I have the great Joe Moore here to talk soon. This show we are going to specifically focus in on Green Bay issues. I think that's where at least half of our audience really just wants that stuff anyway. So this is now going to be called Political Radar Green Bay. And we're going to reserve the more global issues, hopefully get some guests this way for the other show. The Blind Partisan podcast is going to be more about global things where we can talk about walls and Trumps and Pelosi's and all of that kind of stuff. For the people that care about local Green Bay issues and, the surrounding area, I guess, that's what we're going to do here. So, and a note on that, we haven't made any announcement as of yet, maybe by the time you hear this we will, but on our Facebook groups, we have the Political Radar community. We can't necessarily police what everybody does, but the idea is that this show will be associated with the Political Radar community, and the other show will be focused in on the Blind Partisan community. So that is that, and let's jump right into it with Joe Moore.
So will there be different social media pages for each of the subsidiaries of the nation?
Really just those two shows.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Elliot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you could make it. So the first thing that I want to ask, and then I don't have any super structured things, so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on Green Bay. But I'm at the forum that was a few weeks back. You used the word vested, and so. But you're not wearing a vest.
No.
So it's interesting because I was thinking it was grammatically improper. Okay. And I don't want to be that guy, but it's super interesting because, I looked up the definition of vested and it's usually used with vested stock, right? So
yes.
You own it.
Yep.
I love that. I love that you and your family feel ownership of Green Bay.
Right, and that's exactly what it was intended for. We have ownership of our neighborhood. We feel ownership of our street. Really, I mean, I've got a little bit of an advantage there with 6 years as an alderman. Is that I've been able to, take that 6 years to make sure that the city was pouring a lot of resources, and just making sure that we weren't forgotten in one of the oldest parts of the city. And
which part is that?
So the Old North area north of University Avenue, which is very diverse. It's got a very transient population, a lot of multifamily, a lot of different income levels from the very highest on the East Shore and right down to the trailer parks. It's a really awesome district in the city. And, so to make sure that the city don't forget about us, make sure our streets are getting done, make sure, these drug houses are getting taken care of, and, call the police for extra patrols when they were needed. And the city was very accommodating.
I think one of the main issues in the election, I guess, if we can say that there are issues, it is the streets, getting the streets fixed.
Right.
This seems to be a hot button thing. Personally, I actually don't think the streets on average are that bad. But I know there are some trouble spots. So like, what are your thoughts on that and the funding and all of that?
Yeah. So look, 2 years ago, we got rid of that postcard survey, as you know. So the city, they know 3 years in advance what streets they're going to be working on. And there's this 3-year plan for it. So they send out these postcards, and they go to each property owner, not necessarily the tenants of a property, but to the landlord and whoever owns the property. And they get to vote on it. Do you want your street fixed, yes or no? Well, with the assessments, of course, everybody was saying no. I don't want to pay for them. I don't use them. And, whatever, just fix them when they need to be fixed. Don't charge us for it. So doing away with that survey was the first step. And that kind of said, okay, your street needs to be fixed. We're just going to come out and fix it. The engineering on the street's already been done, and we're ready to go. Contracts are ready to be signed and issued for the contractors to come in and do the work. But then what ended up happening is now you've still got a public hearing. You're not just going to bill somebody without talking to them first. And then at the public hearings, then the residents would come forward at the public hearings and say, look, we can't afford these assessments. We can't do this. So
what is the deal with that? Other communities don't have these special assessments.
There's a lot that do. And look, Bellevue is 100%. I mean, I had a 75-foot lot out there that I recently sold, and they had an $11,000 assessment on it. So, I mean, there are different communities that do, and some are a mix of wheel tax and assessment, and some eliminated. Like, look at Schwabenon did a great job. They were able to eliminate assessments altogether. I think that Green Bay can be in that same exact place, but there's a 10-year track to get to that. With the numbers that I look at, 8 to 10 years, we can eliminate assessments and eliminate the wheel tax.
Like, I kind of understand where an assessment can make sense if someone, if we're annexing some properties into the city, right? And we have to like build out sewer. We have to build out the facilities. But okay, so my brother, that it gets complicated because he's not going to live there anymore. but so he lived on the corner of Howard and what is the other street? Anyway, he has 3 streets. He has frontage on 3 streets, and he's owned his house for, I don't know, over a decade, I think. And so when they moved there, they didn't know about the special assessments, and I think that is an issue. Like, I don't know how. And yeah, maybe there was even fine print on some paperwork he signed when he bought his house, but you know how that goes. You got a stack of papers and you sign it as fast as you can, and nobody reads that stuff. So I don't know how a new homeowner would even know that. And you mentioned Ashwaubenon. Why would somebody buy a house here? Well,
look, if there's going to be an assessment, then when the title company does the search, they say there's going to be an assessment. That assessment actually belongs to the seller. So who's ever selling that house, that's coming out of their,
if they know. This was a couple of years after they lived there.
So sure. Yep. Yeah. So if it wasn't planned, then, and there's no record of anything being planned,
it was nobody's fault, and he doesn't he claims his own ignorance on that, but it's, they don't have that everywhere, and they don't have a wheel tax everywhere, and the places where they do, the wheel tax keep going up in price. Right. So, why can't it be part of the regular budget and just, handle it properly?
Sure. Part of it is that you can only raise the taxes so much. Mm-hmm. And if you look over since Mayor Schmidt's been there, he's always, done his best to hold that mill rate flat.
Yep.
And
do you think that was a mistake?
I think it was. The first 6 years, or, the 6 years that I spent on the council too, the first 4 years, we were able to hold it flat. And then in the 5th year, we had to steal from stadium tax to make sure we could keep it flat. And then in the 6th year, they wanted to borrow money out of the general fund to try to reduce the amount of the mill rate increase. Right. But we've been coming to a head on this for years. And anybody who's elected into office, as soon as they do their first budget, they say, oh, this is going to be troublesome coming up here. And if you talk about this, so we talk about the streets for a minute again.
Yeah.
All that engineering, all these city resources already went in, drafting of contracts, everything already went in. And then to have the street pulled out of the program, it's not like you can just replace it because now all this engineering, contracts need to be drafted, everything needs to be redone again. So that's where the city fell behind with, people throw numbers out like 3% of streets that they want to do. Well, that's almost 20 miles of streets a year. That's going to be pretty difficult to do without something significant happening that is going to be very costly to taxpayers. And so the wheel tax coming in now, look, I think the wheel tax needs to sunset. It needs to end. There's a time for it, and it will. But with the wheel tax as a short-term fix, all these streets that have already had the engineering done and already had the contracts drafted, that wheel tax can be used now to catch up on those and get those done. No assessment, no tax rate increase, just using this wheel tax to fix those streets. While that's being done, now these engineers can reevaluate our streets and say, these are the very worst, these are the priority, and get that engineering and everything done on those. There's a lot of complaints about TIF funding, but we've laid ourselves into a pretty good position now that in the next 10 years,
eventually,
over the next 10 years, 7 TIFs are set to expire. And I only have the data up to 2017, but that was an additional $210 million of increment that'll be coming back onto the tax rolls. And that's when that wheel tax can be eliminated, those assessments can go away, because the additional tax revenue on $210 million of increment is $2 million a year. And
did you mean 20?
Based on
did you mean
9
2027?
2020. Well, it'll be 2029.
Okay, because you said 2017.
2017 is what I had the data through for the increment. So in 2029, that increment will obviously be higher.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
But right now you're at a minimum of $2 million coming into the tax rolls.
So you think overall the TIF programs have been successful?
I think the way that the city uses the TIF is successful. I think because we do it as a pay-go, we're guaranteeing the very best possible product. And that's going to mean a lot. But look, when you do a TIF project, we just need to realize we are not going to see the benefit on that for years, however many years it is before that TIF expires. I think we've left our kids in a pretty good position. And I think that me as a 42-year-old need to figure out a way that we're going to limp through these next 10 years. Anybody that comes in and says they got to fix for the budget immediately is just wrong. I mean, we're going to see a mill rate increase over the next 2 years for sure. And then I'm hoping that after this next 2 years, we can see that start to flatten out again like it was as these TIFs start to expire and that additional revenue comes in.
So one thing that came up, and I believe it's going to not come up again, is the and boy, I could have used it today. Put your keys in the car, leave the ignition running with the doors unlocked, $500 fine. Right. And there could be all sorts of good reasons for these kinds of things, but I guess and since that's kind of dead, I guess I really don't care about that so much. But what rubbed me the wrong way, I think, with that idea is that stopping thefts is a core police function.
Right.
Finding other alternate ways to fund that when we're already paying taxes really calls into question what is it that we're paying for. So we have all these extra things that end up getting charged when these are core functions. So what do you think are the core functions of our city government?
Well, look, let's get to the police thing for just a moment.
Yeah.
Specifically. Auto theft is like the one crime or one of the very few crimes that actually has an increase year over year. Over the last 3 years. And I don't have the exact numbers. I went with the chief yesterday and we talked, but I didn't write them down. But it was like, look, 3 years ago we had 71.
So
the year after that we had like 84.
Okay,
this
so
year we
I'm
had
not
108
going to out him, but I already kind of outed him by saying him. But so another alderman told me that 71, or I thought it was 87, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know exactly they are, but
so the numbers in that range, those were the anomalies. That they were so low because we had come down from a high in the 200s.
Oh, and that's very possible. So that's the number I got.
So like things do fluctuate, and there could be all sorts of reasons for that. But I mean, in general, I think the trend is actually lower, adjusted for population. Right. So there's bumps along the way, and maybe it jumped a little bit more than we expected this year. But so I don't know about that.
And trying to head off a trend. Look,
yeah.
$500 is ridiculous. Even the chief told me that yesterday. $500. It was a couple of his officers that brought that forward as a proposal, and he just was the guy invited to the protection and welfare meeting to address it. And even he said, he's like, $500? Are you kidding me? But we talked about look, treat it like a broken taillight. I asked him. I said, how many times do you pull over a car with a broken taillight? You issue them a warning. I said, what are the chances you're pulling that person over a second time? I said, what's that percentage? She's like, it's extremely low. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, so why don't we just treat this the same way? Well, we go do our job. We're supposed to go recover your car when your car gets stolen. We're going to go recover your car when it gets stolen. That's our job.
Yeah.
But if we find out the keys were in it and it was running and the guy just was walking down the alley, it was cold, he hopped in and drove the rest of the way. I said, and that happens again 3 days later. I'm like, okay, maybe you need to start considering billing for services on a second or third or fourth offense when this happens.
If that's what it was said. If that's what was said.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think we have a similar thing for businesses that have alarm systems. You know, if the alarm system goes off once, they kind of give you a warning, or it's a small fee, and then like if it happens again, like anything can happen
For non-emergent
right?
alerts because of a
because that's not good for anybody. And I think even the businesses in that case sort of respect that.
And I will say, look, I think the chief is throwing some stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. I mean, he needs to utilize his resources the very best way that he can. If he's down 14 officers and the city isn't any smaller, it's just as big as it always was. So there's less patrols on the street. Even if the patrols are the same and you're cutting overtime or wherever you're cutting your costs, and there are ways to cut costs, don't get me wrong.
Right,
But
use the blockchain.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Nick.
There's a lot to that, you know, but in certain places, and we are a 160-year-old Rust Belt city. It's going to be hard. I mean, look how long it took just to get new computers in the city hall.
Yeah.
Okay. But so back to just utilizing your resources the best you can. You know, the latest suggestion was licensing driver's licenses for illegals. And of course, people are calling for the chief's head over this.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he's like, look how much time is consumed by my officers when they need to follow up on a hit and run because somebody wasn't licensed and they left the scene of a crime, you know, or whatever might be going on. At least with driver's license, people come out of the woodworks. You know, they're taking a driving test. You know,
But are they going to do that?
They're having their vision checked, and well, to get the driver's license, they would.
But why would they do that?
Well,
I mean, why they didn't go? Okay, so I
they're
mean,
going to drive anyway. You're just hoping you can bring some people out of the woodwork here.
But are they really going to do that?
Who knows? But that's not something that the city council is going to determine anyway. I mean, that's a
state issue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a proposal that, like I said, it was thrown against the wall, and it was like, is this something that would be a good idea so that my officers' times are being better used within the neighborhoods, and instead of having two officers trying to find, okay, number one, a stolen car because the keys were in it, or you know, number two, a hit and run because somebody was unlicensed, uninsured, and they left the scene of a crime. So, I mean, would you rather have these guys patrolling the neighborhoods?
I guess the problem that I have with any of these things where we tack additional fees on, the whole reason we have government do these things is so we can share the risk. You know, if I wanted to pay for my own private police force, I guess I would do that, right? So, like, I struggle with that, and I think about, you know, I don't think I'm very bad off, but I don't have a lot of money, and there are people in much worse situations than me. You know, actual health problems, actual, you know, job displacement, whatever, right? And I worry about, you know, I just have this vision of the, you know, the single mom. She's got, you know, two kids, not infants, in the back seat. Wants to run into Quick Trip, grab some milk and some eggs.
Sure. Yeah.
And the police car is running because they always leave their cars running. And she runs in, and then that very police officer hands her a $500 ticket. Like, those things terrify me.
Yeah, that was a really bad. The way that was proposed, I think we chatted about that. Look, the way it was proposed was awful.
Yeah. But even $50, you know, like, I mean, she can't afford $50. She probably can't afford $5, which is why she doesn't have the time to even like get her kids out of the car and, you know, just. I mean, I feel that way sometimes where I'm like, I don't have a spare $5. And I know there are people that are worse off than me. And like that really scares me. And especially when this person kind of doesn't have as much of a voice because she probably rents. And now we're saying, well, now this lady has to pay wheel tax. And and so we're stacking these fees on top of the people and we're holding the line on property taxes. And so, you know, so I kind of going full circle. I mean, this doesn't have to be a big philosophical debate, but like I view these things as core city functions. You know, there's just a couple things that have to happen. The other stuff is all the icing on top. I get where the revenue comes from with the TIF, but I view the TIF, that's icing, right? Core functions for the city are police, fire. I mean, if you ask the person on the street, right? Not just me. You know, they would say, well, the city, I guess police, fire, garbage pickup.
Plow the streets.
And plow the streets. They wouldn't say that in summer, but they'd say that right now, right?
Well,
and then they'd be like, I don't know. They might think parks. They wouldn't say anything else. The average person on the street. So then they hear fees for these core things. Like, oh, I got a fine for the way my garbage is. I got a fine for plowing, because I had something in the way. The guy actually, the garbage guy yelled at me for not bringing my trash can in early enough. He's like, it was so weird. So we have a snowstorm, and I think he doubled back, and he's like, did anybody get that one yet? And I'm like, I don't know. Isn't that your job? He's yelling from the truck. So whatever, that was one off, and I'm sure he had a long day, and that guy probably has to plow too. So I'm not singling this guy out, but it's just you stack all these things on top of each other.
Of course, yep.
So you're
right. I mean,
you're running for mayor. What are you gonna do about that?
Well, here we are. So we're at the very lowest level of government locally here, right?
Yeah.
You're at the very lowest level, and you have the absolute most effect on people's lives.
Right.
And it is. Are we picking up your garbage? Are we getting the street plowed, the potholes filled? Those are very key. The fire department needs to be fully functioning. The police department should be fully functioning. And those are not places that you want to start making cuts to keep the mill rate flat. With the expenditure restraint program, we're limited to what we can tax. But look, I have found, even in my district, which, like I said, is very diverse financially, this district, most people don't mind paying a few extra dollars from one year to the next, as long as all the services are still being done.
Right.
And so to come in and just say, no new tax, we cannot raise taxes, taxes got to go down. And look, we're taxed where we're taxed, and we're actually taxed at a pretty good rate when you compare, say, Milwaukee, Madison, a lot of other communities. We've got a pretty good mill rate. I think people get a lot of service for what they pay. And now the issue comes in when you start to cut those services because you're not making them pay less. So yes,
we don't want to pay we don't want to pay the same taxes as Milwaukee and Madison.
Absolutely not.
Or we'd move there. There's more opportunity there, right?
Sure.
So we are a smaller community. We have to keep those things in mind.
Right.
So
the whole idea as a mayor is, look, you want to improve on the services. You want to make sure that they are top of the notch. You want to make sure, yes, the streets are getting fixed. You want to do all this, but you don't want to put any further burden on the taxpayers. And there's a very, very fine line in doing that. And unfortunately, over the last 10 years, that fine line has been cutting from these programs, cutting from this program, cutting from here, reducing staff. And it's been lowering these services to make sure that mill rate could stay flat. And like I said, over the last, I say that over the last 10, it was probably over the last 12 years is how long that was taking place. And over the last 5 or 6, we could see this all coming to a head. And so here we are. And the next mayor is going to step in and, that next mayor might be a one-term mayor because we might see 4 years of mill rate increases just to keep the services going that we have right now because we are in a hole. We have a lot of debt. We need to dig out of it. And somebody needs to get elected that's going to come in and have a different outlook on this. It says we are going to pay our bills. We're going to take care of our issues. We're going to get ourselves set up, to be in a good position again.
But grown-ups don't get elected, right? People who go in and say, hey, I'm going to raise taxes. I'm going to be responsible.
Right.
It's the people who come in and say, hey, we're going to build a baseball stadium. So why do you want the job?
I want the job because I am a realist, and I feel that I'm the best person for the job because I'm not just going to throw out a bunch of puffed people. I don't have any ulterior motives. I could definitely make more money doing real estate, and my career there is taking off great, and that's been awesome. So it's not about just having a job and having an income and having a paycheck. I enjoy it. I like policy for some reason. I like creating it. I like the idea of working with the council and holding the council, accountable to be bringing ideas into the city and not just being a rubber stamp. I think I work well with neighboring communities. I just think there's a lot of benefit that I can bring to the city as the mayor.
So, not to put you on the spot too much, but do you have any specific examples of that?
Yeah. So I actually just talked with Tom Zaleski about it, but so, okay, let's talk about bringing people together. We were able to get a plan to put together that both Executive Streckenbach and Mayor Schmidt agreed on and stood together at a podium. And myself and Tom Duane, it took a lot of sitting down and hashing through things and really selling the program on that. And, look, that was on the hotel room tax was the city's part of that, not the sales tax. That could have been done without the city. But the hotel room tax was a big thing because the city is not benefiting a lot from that deal. Not a lot of these projects are coming back into the city specifically. And so for us to sign on, there was some risk in that. Dr. Vonk will tell you that it was a bad deal. But to sell on that program, you're looking at a county the city as the county seat, putting $220 million of investment back into ourselves. And now that next mayor is going to need to go out and we're going to need to sell ourselves on that and say, what other community is doing $200 million investment into themselves? Well, we are, move your business here. We are, build your apartment building here. We are, so let's get this development going with all this residential housing. Because there's a lot of vacant land in Green Bay that needs to be developed. And we are a community that is heavily, again, invested in ourselves. So I think it's going to be a little easier to sell the city now in the future. And one other example, look, myself, Jim Schmidt, and Chris Weary sat down after 5 o'clock one night in City Hall. Just the three of us sat down in the conference room and hashed things out and got a plan put together for Colburn Pool. It helped pay down debt because we were able to do some debt reduction with some of that money, put a maintenance fund together on it, and had the thing open this year. And I mean, it was a great success.
Yeah, I think that that ended up pretty good.
Yeah, and it's got a long-term future now, a long-term viable future at Colburn, which was really important to a lot of neighbors.
So, and I know you got to get going pretty soon. So I'm going to sort of talk out of both sides of my mouth, like, any good media person. So we had another closure on Military Avenue.
Yep.
So Shopko's going away. We already had Toys R Us. We had Sears. So that whole within, whatever, I don't know how big that is, square mile or less, we have some big vacancies. So knowing that we're at a bottom, like you said, what do we do about that?
That's a really tough area right there. There's no real easy access to it off of 41 and 43. I mean, you've got exits that come down and a little drive to get there. You don't have high visibility from the highways in that location. You don't have a very heavy residential, population right there with the rail yards and whatnot. That's a tough spot. I think that the city needs to play off of the Titletown district, and we need to find, I don't know what it would be, but we need to try to start looking for a large anchor project, whether it be something recreational, whether it be something that's a retail. Retail is dying. What a great place for an Amazon center of some sort, but that's going to be a tough location. It just is. And unfortunately, there's a history of businesses that have opened there and closed.
Right.
And anybody that's coming in is going to look and say, how could they not stay open? And look at those numbers. So again, now you really have to sell the city. I'd love to work with Executive Streckenbach and find some kind of a capital project that could be done within the city limits of Green Bay to kind of go along with the investment going into all the surrounding communities.
I mean, realistically.
And maybe it's something in that area.
Realistically, though, there's 3 big boxes, and we're not going to get 3 big box replacements. So, what creative things can we do there? What do you think?
Sure. And, that's where I kind of brought in like the recreation. If there's something that can feed off of what Titletown is doing on their end, that can be that trail in between, and Military Avenue can be that corridor from one great area to another great area. Like something right there, similar to what the Tundra Lodge offers, would be amazing. But finding those investors that are willing to come in and do that, that's, again, where the big hang-up comes in.
So shifting gears a little bit, name recognition-wise, there are definitely a handful that have strong name recognition that are running for the position you're running for. So how well do you think you stack up against the bigger names, so to speak, and what do you think your chances are of coming out of the primary?
Well, I would not be running if my intent wasn't to win. I plan on winning this election. I plan on being the mayor in a few months. I plan on taking that seat. And I do understand that, there are names of people that have run in the past. There's people that have experience. I've got a history which I think is pretty solid. I look back on it. I can't really find too many things that are those OMG Joe did that. What but never voting for the guy kind of thing.
Right.
And like I said, I've got pretty good relationships, I think, with Brown County, and I'd like, to see us working with the Oneida Nation. And I think I've probably been the most outspoken about getting something put together with the Oneida Nation on a service agreement. Like I said, I mean, there's history. Yes, there's name recognition. I mean, I say I'm real. I think I'm the one that asked if Mayor Schmidt was the dumpster fire comments, of course. So that might have helped a little bit, but trust me, when I did that wasn't for press.
Right.
But I'm an easy guy to get a hold of. I've got a strong social media presence.
I will second that. Whenever I contact you, you get right back to me.
people know me.
Yeah.
And that's going to help me a lot. I am definitely nonpartisan. I don't think you can find anything in my past that ties me to any kind of a party. I've always been a best candidate voter, which I understand. I probably offset my own vote sometimes. But look, I have the best interest of the city in mind. And I think that'll hopefully go over with a lot of people.
But those are all good things. But we are kind of a two-party country. And
we are.
And my understanding is that the two parties have sort of picked who they want.
Yeah. Right.
So, how do you fight that? Because, I mean, to be perfectly honest, even everybody watching this is probably not going to vote on February 19th.
Oh, it'll be a low turnout. Look, second place in that might be 1,600 to 1,800 votes.
Right.
Might push you through the primary, into the general election. Kind of sad. It's a sad state of affairs.
So how do you energize your voters?
I'm just trying to make sure people are aware that, look, I've got a website, moreforgreenbay.com, and people can go on there and they can register. They can make sure that
they can register for what?
They can get on there. They can get to the myvote.gov link right off of the site. So they can get in there, verify that they're registered to vote. So they're not, trying to do it on election day. I think that's really important. Make sure people know where they stand and that they can. Early voting starts on January 29th. So I plan on making that push to you and getting people out to get down to City Hall and get their vote in right away. Look, take advantage of things like Political Radar at Green Bay. And don't
worry about it.
Take advantage of, really anything that I can to make sure that I am in front of a camera and that I am seen. Because, look, I don't have $100,000 to put into this race. I've started doing a little fundraising. I'm being wise with my money and making sure I'm spending it in the right places. It's just, look, I'm busy. I'm burning both ends of the candle here between a job and campaigning. And not every candidate's worrying about a job while they're campaigning.
Right.
So yes, political parties have chosen their sides, but really that just brings money and it brings volunteers probably to go out and knock on doors, but it doesn't bring much more than that. There is a divide, and by having somebody like that endorse you, you've alienated half the population. So I really wouldn't want any of those endorsements anyway.
Nice. I think that's a good time to wrap it up. Because I know you mentioned you're busy. You got to go pick up the
half
kids.
Day of school for the kids today, so I got to go get the little one.
So thanks for watching. Again, I'm glad you mentioned that date. January 29th is early voting. You can go down to City Hall. You can vote. And February 19th, right, is the primary election. So please go out and vote. Whether you vote for our friend here or any of the other candidates, that would be fantastic. I think Joe would agree with us that we would love that number to not be 1,600. It'd be great if it was, double that or whatever, right? More voters is better. More people involved is better. That's why we do this show. So join us in the Political Radar community on Facebook. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, again, I apologize. I was sick yesterday in my defense, so that's why I look a little horrid, extra horrid today. But please hit the little bell, subscribe, get notifications, and we're going to try to get everybody. We're going to try to get everybody in here for that's running for mayor, so that you can hear the issues and hear about the candidates. That's all I got.
Thanks for listening to Political Radar. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. To stay up to date, visit politicalradar.com or connect with us on Facebook or Twitter.